So if you didn't know, Blizzard Entertainment, the Hearthstone team, decided to remove duels from the game. And if you didn't know what duels was, it was what? Basically PvP dungeon runs is what I'm going to call it. But let's read the announcement first before I get to what I like my opinion on this whole thing, right? As we think about the future of Hearthstone, where the team can best focus their efforts, we have made the difficult decision to discontinue support for the duels mode. We do not have plans for any further scheduled updates for duels, and the mode itself is scheduled to be removed from the Hearthstone client in 2024. This change will allow us to shift our resources to where we feel we will have the most impact, including traditional Hearthstone, which is like standard wild, maybe wild, I don't know. Battlegrounds, obviously, and more. To that end, Battlegrounds Duos is scheduled for an upcoming Battlegrounds patch, and we're trying out some Duels treasure at our next arena season. More details to come. We want to thank all our passionate Duels fans for every pile of loot, treasure, and hard-fought victory you collect along the way. It's been a heroic run we could have done without you. All right, let's talk about this real fast. I think that Blizzard saw that not enough players were actually playing this game mode, and they decided to get rid of it because it's not worth paying someone to consistently update this game. And after Tabarak left, who was the guy who basically, I want to say like maintained duels, it kind of basically fell off a cliff because there was no one really passionate about the format. It seemed like it was like his own like love child or whatever you want to call it. I don't really know. That being said, I think duels was kind of fucking failing from the start, if I just was going to be honest, because they kind of really missed the mark on what duels should have been, and they got greedy with it. But before I get to that, we first have to talk about a different game mode in Hearthstone because we need a comparison so I don't sound like I'm just hating on Blizzard for absolutely no reason here. Let me pull up this stream. Or let me pull up my Hearthstone client real fast. I didn't have it up in the meantime. Do you guys remember when Tavern Brawl was introduced into the game? Tavern Brawl was introduced in the game around Black Rock Mountain. I don't remember where it was, but Tavern Brawl was really successful. One of the reasons why Tavern Brawl was really successful, at least in my opinion, is because Tavern Brawl was a fun way of playing Hearthstone that didn't require you to put in an initial investment. The very first Tavern Brawl was like the boss ones with Nefarian, and I think it was Kel'Thuzad. I can't remember what the other dragon was. And people loved it. Oh, it's Rag and Nefarian. Yeah, people loved it. People loved it because it was a brand new way to play Hearthstone, right? And the main thing I want to point out before we even continue down this path is I don't think they made Tavern Brawl with the concept of like they were going to make money from it, right? It was just another way for you to utilize your collection that you're already going to have for playing standard Hearthstone. And in fact, it encouraged you to spend more money because you wanted to use these cards in these really wacky formats. At the moment, by the way, Tavern Brawl kind of sucks ass, and I'll get to that later. We then move on to the second game mode that they added into Hearthstone. I'm not gonna count Arena because Arena was in the game from the very beginning. But then they added Battlegrounds. You know why Battlegrounds was really successful, chat? Was because Battlegrounds was made with a labor of love and didn't have the idea of just farming money from our Hearthstone players, because Battlegrounds was also a Tavern Brawl. When the Tavern Brawl of Battlegrounds was introduced, people loved it. So they decided to make its very own format for it. And guess what? Battlegrounds is the most popular game mode in Hearthstone. The most popular game mode in Hearthstone. Because people really liked it, right? It's easy to get into. There's no barrier. You could just play the game and queue up. And the great thing about Battlegrounds is Battlegrounds didn't require you to have some kind of investment immediately. So anyone who wanted to try Battlegrounds could try it without worrying about being behind someone else or not having the best deck in the game. Also, Battlegrounds had they didn't make the game mode to make money. Someone just made it for fun in Tavern Brawl, and it ended up being a really great experience. Even like normal Hearthstone, which is the core foundation of gameplay in this client, is really successful because even though I'm sure they wanted to make money from this game, obviously they're a business, the main format of Hearthstone is really fucking good. And like they made a game that was very, very enjoyable from the very beginning, even though it did require you to have cards, right? That one's the little caveat there. But all of these game modes, Tavern Brawl, Battlegrounds, and like regular Hearthstone were basically made with the concept of make the game fun first, and then we ship them with money, right? That's what expansions were for. Tavern Brawl kind of died out because they stopped really focusing on it, in my opinion. I think Tavern Brawl is still like one of the best formats in this game, but they kind of just leave it to die, and I have no idea why when there's so much potential with that format. But we see it with Twist, and we saw it with Duels, right? Duels was absolutely disgusting in how they released it, because I don't remember how much money it was, but you have to own a very specific amount of the collection of the current expansion or something in order for you to get some of the cards. And the problem with that is that immediately gave a barrier for people who are free to play and don't want to try it out. You know what the lifeblood of this game is, guys? It's people who don't spend money. It's not people who are whaling. It is the people who don't spend any money. And because of that reason, Duels when it released was already kind of fucking dying, because people just didn't want to spend money for a format that like wasn't that successful to begin with. If you look at Mercenaries, it's kind of the same concept, right? Mercenaries came out, and God, believe me, I know a lot about Mercenaries because I spent a fuck ton of money on it. Also, remember when it was on the homepage? Mercenaries was the same problem. Mercenaries was literally designed to try to milk people for money. Now, that being said, I'm sure the people who actually tried to make the game fun really tried to make the game fun. Like, I would hope, because there was aspects of the game that were really enjoyable, but Mercenaries ended up being just another way of milking people for money. And the initial idea was probably, how do we get as much money as possible, and then we'll worry about gameplay second, because I'm sure all of us could agree with this game mode that it felt really underbaked. It felt like it was really underbaked, correct? So we're in this position of like, how do these game modes even succeed if they don't have a great introduction, right? How do we even try to make people excited for a format like Mercenaries, which again is completely different, but Duels especially, like, it didn't have its moment to really shine, to really get a good enough fan base for people to really want to try Duels from the beginning and maintain its player base. Because eventually what happened was they made it so Duels was like way more easy to get into, because they got rid of the barriers of owning a very they got rid of the barrier of owning enough of a collection to get like the really good treasures and stuff. So it made Duels a lot easier. But at that point, it's like no one gives a fuck anymore, right? Like it never had a chance to shine. We're also seeing it right now with Twist, right? Twist is like this weird iteration of Tavern Brawl that I felt like did not get the support it deserved either. And if you think about it, I'm not going to make any claims here, but they did make Caverns of Time for like a wild only expansion. But I'm pretty sure they had the concept of like, this format's just going to make us money, and that's where we're going with. Which again, we don't have like any real basis here, but considering it's Blizzard, it does feel really, really bad. And I think a lot of us can just assume that was their idea going into it. So if you think about it, Twist, Mercenaries, Duels, the last three game modes released all had the same core problem of a barrier of entry, and it was felt underbaked because the core concept was about money more than it was about the actual gameplay loop. The reason why Battlegrounds is so successful is because it wasn't made with the idea of money, right? At least that's my opinion. Okay, we can't back that up. I can't just tell that Blizzard's doing that intentionally. Now, in terms of this Hearthstone Duels, I think it is a good idea to get rid of this format, because this is not a static format. This is one that constantly gets updated with new cards being introduced, because they allow new cards to be introduced. So if they don't have somebody to constantly update the format, this game mode's gonna die anyways, right? It's gonna absolutely fall off a cliff. Like, because if there's no update, it's the same thing with happening with Classic Hearthstone. Like, if there's no update, people are gonna stop playing it. It's just gonna be botted or whatever, and then it's gonna end in a very poor experience. The real benefit of removing Duels from the client is that, theoretically speaking, their client will not be as poopy, but also they could use the person who is going to be developing for Duels anyways on something that they want to focus on more. What are they going to focus on more, though? That's a very good question. I have no idea, right? I have no idea what they're going to use that person for. I don't even know if there was a person focusing on Duels, because I don't really pay attention to the game mode. It wasn't for me. So I'm a little sad about it, right? I feel like it's very discouraging to see that Duels is being removed. Mercenaries stop getting updates. I'm sure Twist at some point, unless they do something pretty extreme, will probably die too, because they're just not supporting the game mode. And it's like a cycle that they, what's that word? Like when you make your own cycle, like, oh God, you reap what you sow, right? If you don't support your game modes and make sure people can play them and have fun with them, it's just going to die off every single time. So I don't know. It sucks, man. It sucks. It makes me discouraged for the future of Hearthstone. The worst part about it is this is the 10th year of Hearthstone, and you would hope for the 10th year of Hearthstone that there would be a lot of really good things to be proud of and reflect on and, you know, introduce to your player base. But the first real news that we've gotten is where they're going to remove duels. Like that's horrific. You know what the other part that really bothers me too is, and I don't blame any of the developers of this game, because there's absolutely no way that I would want to, you know, get on a video or a live stream or whatever, or start a thread on Twitter talking about why duels is being removed. But I wish there was a little bit more transparency on what they're doing, because unlike Marvel Snap, which, well, at least it feels like unlike Marvel Snap, because I don't think we got like what's coming in the future. You know, when they have like here's what's happening in the game. Like Marvel Snap had it recently. I forget what they're called. But we didn't get one last year. We also haven't got one this year yet. Hopefully they'll give one soon. So we have nothing to look forward to currently at the moment. All we've seen is them take away from us. Roadmap. Yeah, the roadmap. Exactly. Yeah. So we haven't got a roadmap in Hearthstone. We didn't get one last year. We haven't got one yet, where it feels really bad from a player perspective and like your confidence in Hearthstone going forward, especially for the 10th year. If they don't say like, we're taking the resources we had for duels to put it into something else that we're going to be really proud of. I'm really like bummed for the people who really like duels, but my bigger problem is actually like a step back from that, which is the bigger picture of Hearthstone of being like, guys, you guys need to like make sure that our confidence is still there. And I just don't feel that. And the way that they've handled duels, and we also have mercenaries, like I'm worried. I am really, really worried for the future of Hearthstone if this is how they're going to handle it. I will say that this is also really bad for any new game mode that they showcase, because that means that potentially, even if the game mode is successful for a month, it just could potentially die in like 6 months, which is really bad for the confidence of your players. Also, Rip Raffle, bro. I feel so bad for the guy. I remember talking to him at BlizzCon. And he was like, yeah, duels has been really enjoyable. I've been having a lot of fun with it. Absolutely shit on that. Also, to be fair, I don't blame Hearthstone for doing this. If it truly was not enough of a player base for them to want to continue supporting this, I understand. But I feel like there needs to be more transparency on what this actually means for the future of Hearthstone. Like that's what I would say.